Welcome back to another week of At Your Peak, finishing up strong here on a fabulous Friday. Want to talk to you about imposter syndrome. We have started this whole vignette called At Your Peak. It's a video personal empowerment series that scripturally based, biblically based, that is used to fuel and foster revival culture and thinking. Usually they run about 5 to 8 minutes. And we've been talking fundamentals, just things, these daily routine, habitual things that we've been just pounding that rock now for quite some time. And each of them can stand on their own, but they all kind of build together. And so if you go back and look at our app or on our web, you'll see all of these little video vignettes, if you will, under the title At Your Peak, under the series Fundamentals. We really felt like the Lord is talking to our church about doing fundamentals well in the season that we're in. And coming off the heels of COVID, 2020, 2021, here in 2022, we feel like this is a great way to start the year, is to build fundamentals. So I want to talk to you about imposter syndrome. And this is a term coined by a lot of business culture. There's a psychological term, but it's this idea that leaders, because of their inadequacies and their mindsets and their flaws, no matter how successful they may or may not be, there's this idea that if people really got to know me, they would see me for the fraud or the imposter, like I'm just faking it. And here's the thing is, while imposter syndrome, a lot of times when we talk about it in that context, can seem super exaggerated. I think if we're honest, some of us have been put in positions where I don't have a clue what I'm doing. I hope God shows up because I'm clueless here. You feel like an imposter. I'm sure Jesus' disciples felt that way too when he was asking them to do supernatural things they'd never done before. In leading the early church, birth of the early church in the 2,000 years ago on the heels of Jesus' death and resurrection. I'm sure they probably felt like that at times too. So this reality is there. But in Judges chapter 6, I've mentioned this story before in our At Your Peak series, but the story of Gideon is just profound. Here's a guy who, if anybody had a right to feel like there's imposter syndrome, a guy that just didn't feel like they measured up and couldn't compare to anything else, and what am I doing and who am I? It was Gideon. I think we can all relate to him. He was hiding in a wine press. The enemies of God, you can read the story. Many of you know the story, but he's hiding in a wine press, and the enemies of God are all around them, ready to crash in and threatening him, and bad things happening in his culture. Everything, society's going to heck in a handbasket. It's just awful. And he's hiding. And the people of God that he's connected to have this up-down relationship with God. So they hit the wall, hit pain, and they all repent, and they come back to the Lord. And then after things have leveled off for a little while and they're out of trauma and pain, then they go back to their idolatry and stupid ways. Here's what happens though with Gideon. He's in this cycle, and his parents have idols, and they're all messed up, and he feels super insignificant. So he's hiding in a place he shouldn't be because he has no courage, because the culture has just terrorized him. So we pick it up in Judges 6, verse 14. It says, then the Lord, he encounters the Lord. The Lord turns to him and says, I want you to deliver Israel. Go and rescue them. Go with the strength that you have. Rescue my people from the Midianites, the enemy. I'm sending you. But Lord, here comes the disqualifier. How can I rescue Israel? My clan, I'm pathetic. My clan, I feel like an imposter. My clan is the weakest in the whole tribe of Manasseh. I'm the least in my entire family. So here comes all the excuses. And Gideon was chosen in spite of all that. He had that mindset, and God says, nope, you're my guy. Gideon was chosen, and his response revealed the inner saboteur. He had imposter syndrome going on. Who am I? What Gideon had to fight through, and what leaders you have to fight through, is you have to learn to lead and overcome inadequacy when you don't feel qualified. And Gideon was just flat out hiding. He was hiding from everything. Here's what I'm also learning. Some of the best leaders out there are the ones in hiding. They're not on the front lines promoting me, some me. Some of them are just in plain old fear, and they're waiting for the Christ in you to call out the greatness in them and pull them out of the winepress and say, you mighty man of valor. That's what God did with him. You mighty princess of valor. Go and take it to our enemies. Go in my strength and watch me work my wonders. This is an important thing for all of us because oftentimes we'll create the inner saboteur that I mentioned that says, I don't measure up. I don't have what it takes. Insert all of the leadership flaws. If you've ever read leadership books or things, you'll see how people are designed, and visionaries don't always have tactical strengths, right? Because visionaries, they're thinking big picture, and tactical strength is more focused on the micro to get the job done. You have strategic people who are a lot in the mind, but they don't have the capacity to see the big picture. They need the big picture people. So we all have strengths that are also weaknesses. If we're not careful with the inner saboteur, the imposter syndrome, when we step into our God-given authentic identities, we'll look at our weaknesses and make excuses for what we're not, and build an inner dialogue that says we won't be able to accomplish it, and builds a case against ourselves because we think we're a fraud, because we don't think we have what it takes. Here's the truth. The enemy is more than happy to surround you with people who tell you you can't, you won't, and you never will. He's happy to send Christians and non-Christians to echo that message. Believe it or not, in ministry, I've heard this more than once. Some of the harshest, meanest, and nastiest words I've ever gotten are from faith-filled, spirit-filled Christians. Truth. And what makes it so hard is because sometimes there's an element of truth in what they're saying to me that I want to buy the whole thing that they're saying hook, line, and sinker, and it makes me want to change my identity and say, they're right, I just suck, I'm terrible. That's the inner saboteur. Maybe the truth is I need to learn from what some of the one things my critics are saying without swallowing hook, line, and sinker the full criticism and making that my identity. I know many of you can relate to this because it feeds the inner saboteur that says I'm an imposter. No, the truth is we all have areas of our life that need pruning and need growth. There's areas in each of our lives where, if we're honest, there's a little bit of hypocrisy there. We know what we're supposed to do, but we don't do it. It can be as light as I need to eat healthy food and I go and I munch out on McDonald's 24/7. It could be, I really need to take a break from TV and I go home on a Netflix binge. I've done that, so I can relate. But that doesn't give us the right to call ourselves imposters. Here's the truth. And I'm saying this to somebody who's either been severely criticized by their enemies. They're hiding in a wine press. God is calling you out. He's calling you out to the greatness. Whether you're hidden or not, God will help find and resurrect you and bring you to a place that you can be totally restored and totally healed. And God did that with Gideon, raised him up, put him through some tests that he needed to go through to grow in his walk with God, and he brought deliverance to God's people. This is you. But you got to get rid of the inner saboteur. Would you agree with me that what actions do you need to push through and lead in an era of hesitancy, uncertainty, and reluctancy? God can use anybody, anytime, any place, anywhere to do absolutely anything, and that person is you. Now come out of the wine press and get leading. Love you. We'll see you tomorrow.